Be me 26-year-old male Leo, working a dead-end graphic design job at a soulless marketing firm. The kind of place where inspirational posters of eagles soaring over mountains feel more like a threat than a promise. My life is a beige cubicle, a lukewarm coffee, and the constant hum of fluorescent lights. Not exactly the hero's journey I imagined in college. My best friend Noah is in the same boat. We met in a design theory class, both convinced we were the next Saul Bass. Now we mostly just send each other memes about kerning and existential dread. He works at a rival firm across town, so we have this unspoken, gallows humor camaraderie. Our highlight of the week is grabbing beers on Friday and complaining about clients who want their logos to pop more. Enter Isabel. She started at my firm about a year ago. She was different. Not in a manic pixie dream girl way, just driven. Like she had a motor inside her that was always running at a higher RPM than everyone else's. She had this incredible energy, a supernova in a sea of dying stars. Sharp, witty, and so ambitious it was almost intimidating. She dressed like she was already a creative director, all sharp blazers and confident strides. I was still figuring out how to iron a shirt without burning it. We hit it off pretty quickly. Started as work friends, grabbing lunch, brainstorming on projects. She had a way of looking at a design problem that was completely fresh. She'd see angles I missed, connections that were invisible to me. I was technically good, but she was visionary. It was intoxicating to be around. One night, we were working late on a big pitch. The office was empty, just the two of us and the quiet hum of the servers. We were both tired, running on fumes and stale donuts. She leaned back in her chair, stretched, and looked at me with this exhausted but determined glint in her eyes. "You know, Leo," she said, her voice a little softer than usual, "you're really good at this. Better than you let on." It was the first time someone at work had said something that felt genuine, not the usual corporate fluff. I felt a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the bad coffee. That night, something shifted. We started talking more, not just about work. We talked about our dreams, our fears, the kind of lives we wanted to live. She wanted to build an empire, to have her name on the door of her own agency one day. She talked about it with such certainty, it was impossible not to believe her. I just wanted to create something that mattered, something that wasn't just designed to sell more flavored water. We started dating a few months later. It was incredible at first. She was passionate about everything, not just work. Our dates were never boring. We'd go to gallery openings, obscure indie film screenings, hole-in-the-wall restaurants she'd read about in some niche food blog. She pushed me to be better, to try harder, to not settle for mediocrity. I started working on my own personal projects again, things I'd let slide for years. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in a long time. But there was another side to her ambition. It was a hunger that was never satisfied. She was always networking, always on, always looking for the next opportunity. Our weekends started to fill up with industry events, schmoozing with potential clients, making connections. I'd stand there awkwardly, holding a glass of cheap wine, trying to make small talk with some marketing VP who only wanted to talk about his golf swing. Isabel, on the other hand, would glide through the room like a shark, effortless and deadly. She'd come back to me, buzzing with excitement, talking about a new contact she made, a potential project she'd sniffed out. I'd smile and nod, but a small part of me felt empty. It was like I was a spectator in her life, not a participant. I tried to talk to her about it once. We were driving home from one of these events, the city lights blurring past the car window. "Don't you ever just want a quiet night in?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Just us, no networking, no shop talk." She glanced at me, her brow furrowed in genuine confusion. "But this is how we get ahead, Leo. This is how we build the future we talked about." "Our future?" I asked. "Or your future?" The words hung in the air between us, heavy and sharp. She didn't answer right away. She just stared out at the road, her jaw tight. "It's the same thing, isn't it?" she finally said, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. It wasn't, and we both knew it. Things started to get strained after that. It was like a hairline fracture had appeared in the foundation of our relationship, and every ambitious move she made, every networking event she dragged me to, was making it wider. She was constantly on her phone, answering emails at dinner, taking calls at all hours. The spotlight she craved was so bright, it was starting to cast a shadow over everything else. I felt myself starting to resent it, and I hated myself for it. I wanted to be the supportive boyfriend, the one who cheered her on as she conquered the world. But I was starting to feel like a prop in her perfectly curated life. The guy who stood next to her in photos, smiling on cue. One evening, I came home from work, exhausted and drained. I just wanted to order a pizza, watch a stupid movie, and forget about the world for a few hours. I walked into our apartment to find Isabel in a whirlwind of activity. She was on the phone, pacing back and forth, gesturing wildly with her free hand. "No, no, that's not what I want," she was saying, her voice sharp and commanding. "It needs to be bolder, more disruptive. I'll send you a new brief in the morning." She hung up and immediately started typing furiously on her laptop. She didn't even look up when I came in. "Hey," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Hey," she mumbled, her eyes glued to the screen. "Big crisis with the new client, I have to fix it." I stood there for a long moment watching her. The woman I loved was right in front of me, but she felt a million miles away. She was chasing this huge, glittering prize, and I wasn't even sure if I was part of it anymore. That night, the silence in our apartment was deafening. We were two strangers sharing a space, each lost in our own world. I looked at her asleep in our bed, her face finally at peace, and I realized with a soul-crushing certainty that I was losing her, or maybe I had already lost her and was just now admitting it to myself. The nights were the hardest. Because when the chase was over for the day, when the emails were answered and the calls were made, there was just a silence. An empty space where a connection used to be. She chased power and the spotlight all day, but her nights ended in a profound, soul-crushing silence. And I was trapped in it with her. I talked to Noah about it over beers the next Friday. He listened patiently, his brow furrowed in concern. "Dude, that's rough," he said, taking a long sip of his beer. "It sounds like she's on a rocket ship and you're not sure if you have a ticket." "That's exactly what it feels like," I admitted, the words a bitter taste in my mouth. "I love her, Noah, I really do. But I feel like I'm disappearing." "Have you told her that, like really told her?" I shook my head. "Every time I try, it turns into a fight. She accuses me of not being supportive, of trying to hold her back." "Is she wrong?" he asked gently. I flinched. It was a fair question. Was I holding her back? Was my desire for a simpler, quieter life a weight on her ambition? "I don't think so," I said, but I wasn't sure. I want a partner, not a CEO." Noah was quiet for a moment, swirling the beer in his glass. "You know, my grandpa once told me something. He said you can't make someone love you the way you want to be loved. You can only love them the way they are and hope it's enough." His words hit me harder than I expected. Was I trying to change Isabel, or was I just realizing that who she was wasn't who I needed? The breaking point came a few weeks later. It was my 30th birthday. I hadn't made a big deal about it, but I had hoped for a quiet night with Isabel. I'd booked a table at our favorite little Italian place, the one we went to on our first date. I even bought a new shirt. I texted her in the afternoon, reminding her about our reservation. "Can't wait," she texted back, followed by a string of heart emojis. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could reconnect, find our way back to what we had at the beginning. I got to the restaurant a little early, the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I sat at our table, nursing a glass of wine, watching the door. 7 o'clock came and went, then 7:30. I called her phone. It went straight to voicemail. I sent a text. No reply. By 8 o'clock, the pitying looks from the waiter were becoming unbearable. I paid for my untouched wine and left, the festive atmosphere of the restaurant feeling like a cruel joke. I walked home in a daze, the city a blur of noise and light. Every laughing couple I passed felt like a personal insult. When I got back to our apartment, all the lights were on. I could hear voices inside, loud and boisterous. I opened the door to find our living room filled with people. Strangers in expensive suits, holding champagne flutes, laughing at some joke I wasn't privy to. Isabel was in the center of it all, a radiant smile on her face, a glass of champagne in her hand. She was holding court, captivating everyone with some story. She saw me standing in the doorway and her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Then it was back, brighter than ever. Leo. There you are, she called out, her voice a little too loud. Everyone, this is my amazing boyfriend Leo. It's his birthday today. A smattering of polite applause rippled through the room. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me, and I had never felt more alone. She made her way through the crowd to me, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Isn't this amazing?" she whispered, squeezing my arm. I landed the Henderson account. "It's huge, I had to celebrate." "My birthday," I said, my voice flat and emotionless. "We had plans." Her smile finally vanished, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. "Leo, don't be like that. This is a huge deal for us." For our future," I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Isabel, there is no us in this room. There's just you and your audience." I turned and walked into our bedroom, closing the door behind me, the sound of her party a dull, throbbing ache in my head. I sat on the edge of the bed, the silence of the room a stark contrast to the noise outside. And in that moment, I knew it was over. The silence wasn't just in the room, it was in my heart. It was the silence of a future that had died. She came in a few minutes later, her face a mask of anger and confusion. "What is your problem?" she demanded, her voice low and furious. "You're embarrassing me." "Embarrassing you?" I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Isabel, you threw a party for your career on my birthday, a birthday you forgot about." "I didn't forget," she insisted, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "I just got caught up." This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. "And what am I?" I asked, my voice cracking. "A once-in-a-while opportunity, someone you fit in when there's a gap in your schedule. That's not fair, isn't it?" I stood up, my own anger finally bubbling to the surface. "I have been nothing but supportive of you, of your dreams. I have stood by your side at countless events, smiling and nodding like a trained seal. I have eaten more bad canapés for you than I care to remember, and what do I get in return? A forgotten birthday and a room full of strangers." Tears were streaming down her face now, tears of frustration and anger, not sadness. "I'm building a life for us," she cried. "Why can't you see that? Because it's not a life I want," I shouted, the words tearing out of me. "I don't want a life that's a constant performance, a never-ending pitch. I want a partner, not a brand. I want a home, not a networking hub." We stood there, breathing heavily, the chasm between us wider than the Grand Canyon. The noise from the party outside seemed to have faded away, leaving only the sound of our broken hearts. "I love you, Isabel," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "But I can't do this anymore. I can't live in your shadow, waiting for the spotlight to turn my way for a few fleeting moments." She just stared at me, her face pale, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. It was like she was seeing me for the first time, not as her supportive boyfriend, but as a separate person with his own needs and desires. And in that moment, I think she finally understood. She understood that the power and the spotlight she had been chasing so relentlessly had a cost, and that cost was us. I packed a bag that night, my movements slow and deliberate. Every object I touched, every piece of clothing I folded was a memory of a life that was now over. She didn't try to stop me. She just sat on the bed, watching me, her face a blank canvas of shock and grief. When I was done, I walked to the door, my hand hovering over the knob. I turned to look at her one last time. "I hope you get everything you want, Isabel," I said, and I meant it. "I really do." And then I walked out, closing the door on our life together, the sound of her silent sobs following me down the hall. The next few months were a blur of pain and numbness. I crashed on Noah's couch, a refugee from my own life. He was a rock, a constant source of support and bad jokes. He never said, "I told you so," even though he would have been well within his rights to. He just made sure I ate, that I showered, that I didn't completely disappear into myself. I quit my job at the marketing firm. I couldn't bear the thought of seeing her every day, of being a constant reminder of what we had lost. I took a freelance gig, something to pay the bills, something that didn't require me to sell my soul for a soda brand. I started painting again, really painting, not just for a client, but for myself. I poured all my pain, all my anger, all my confusion onto the canvas. It was messy and raw and honest, and it was the only thing that kept me sane. About 6 months later, Noah and I were at a small gallery opening for a local artist. It was the kind of place Isabel would have loved, full of interesting people and creative energy. I was starting to feel like myself again, a new version of myself, one that was a little more bruised, a little more cynical, but also a little more real. And then I saw her. She was across the room talking to some guy in a ridiculously expensive suit. She looked incredible, as always, but there was something different about her, a hardness in her eyes, a brittle quality to her smile. She was laughing, but it didn't reach her eyes. Our eyes met for a brief second, a jolt of electricity passing between us. I saw a flicker of something in her gaze, something that looked like regret, before she turned away, her smile back in place. I didn't talk to her, there was nothing left to say. I just watched her for a few more minutes, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. She had gotten what she wanted. She had her own agency now, I'd heard through the grapevine. She was a rising star in the industry, a force to be reckoned with. She was surrounded by people, the center of attention, the life of the party. But as I watched her, I saw it. The same thing I had seen all those nights in our apartment. The silence, it was there right behind her eyes, a vast, empty expanse that no amount of success or adoration could fill. She was the queen of a lonely kingdom, the star of a show with no audience that mattered. I turned to Noah, a small smile playing on my lips. "You know," I said, "I think I'm going to be okay." He clapped me on the shoulder, a proud grin on his face. I never had any doubt, man, and he was right. I was going to be okay, because I had finally understood something that Isabel never could, that the brightest spotlight in the world can't warm you if you're standing in it alone, and the loudest applause can't fill the silence of a life without love. A few years have passed since that night. I have my own small design studio now, just me and a couple of other artists. We don't do big, flashy campaigns for soulless corporations. We work with nonprofits, with local businesses, with people who are passionate about what they do. It's not glamorous, and I'm certainly not getting rich, but I love it. I'm creating things that matter, things that have a purpose beyond just making a profit. I'm happy. SSS, I met someone new a while back. Her name is Clara, and she's a musician. She's passionate and driven, but in a different way than Isabel. Her ambition isn't about power or recognition, it's about connection. It's about creating music that moves people, that makes them feel something. We have a small apartment together, filled with my paintings and her music. It's a home, not a stage. Our nights are filled with quiet conversations, with shared laughter, with the comfortable silence of two people who are truly seen by each other. I saw Isabel again recently on the cover of a business magazine. The headline was "The Unstoppable Force of Isabel Vance." She looked powerful, successful, every inch the empress she had always wanted to be. But her eyes still had that same haunted look, that same deep, abiding loneliness. I felt a pang of sadness for her, for the woman she was, for the woman she could have been. But it was a fleeting sadness, like a cloud passing over the sun, because I was no longer living in her shadow. I was standing in my own light, a warm, gentle light that came from within. And for the first time in a very long time, my nights were not silent. They were filled with the beautiful, messy, wonderful sound of a life well lived, a life I had built for myself, not for an audience, a life that was finally my own.